Gran Turismo 7 is known for being absolutely packed solid of hidden details and secrets, and it's time for my third episode of the series with even more hidden details and secrets inside of Gran Turismo 7. But before we do get into this video, I'm trying to get this channel to 70,000 subscribers. So if you want to stay up to date with everything GT and motorsport gaming related, then feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and turn your notifications on. Anyway, let's get to it. So kicking off episode 3 of this series, we're going to begin with clocks. Of course, with this, I'm referring to the in-car clocks that are inside of pretty much every single car inside of GT7. Now, if you're somewhere like in your garage, it will actually display the real world time that it currently is wherever you are in the world. However, it's a little bit different when you're actually racing the cars. So the way it actually works when you're in a race in Gran Turismo 7, it will display the time for that specific event. Now when it comes to the in-game clock, as long as you can see it and such, it can be pretty useful in something, let's say VR, when you can predict when the night's actually going to come in or when the sunrise is going to be just by looking at the clock. So overall it can be a little bit of a useful feature, but it is pretty awesome just to see it display the real world time. Of course here you are seeing the footage massively sped up, so you can see just how it actually ticks over and how it works in terms of the in-game events of GT7. Of course, if it doesn't have any time movement, then it will just display that specific time that the event is set for. Now number 2 is going to be wet grass. In episode 2 we did discuss the fact that the grass will move around in the wind and cars can blow it as they go past. However, when it comes to the wet grass, this is still once again incredibly dynamic. Number 1, it gets very saturated the heavier it rains. So if it really downpours, you actually see massive puddles form on the grass itself. It's also very dynamic. Every single bit of grass actually has a different wet level condition. Some of it might be into intermediate territories and some of it in full wets. So let's say you go off the track on intermediates, you might not struggle on a certain bit of grass, but if you go off elsewhere, it might be incredibly wet and in full wet conditions and hugely bog your car down even more. I just thought this was very impressive to see the attention of detail on the grass. Next up is going to be number 3, sticking with wet weather. This is wet tyre wear. Now of course some of the trickiest conditions in Gran Turismo 7 is the wet weather. As we can see here, we're on a racing hard compound of tyre. We've been caught out in the middle of Spa and unfortunately we're trying to get ourselves back to the pits. This is the typical way in which it will happen, especially if it comes in incredibly quick. Now at that point you will more than likely go ahead and pit for a set of wet weather tyres or intermediates, and of course from there you're going to try and survive that wet weather. However, there is a high chance it will probably start drying out on the track, and at this point you'll probably notice that your intermediates or wets will start absolutely shredding themselves. However, if you don't want to go ahead and have to make a last lap pit stop or something to just pit on dries for a single lap, then there is a way to keep your tyres alive for longer, and it's a real tactic that we see in actual motorsports, and that is looking for the wet parts of the track to keep those intermediates and wets alive for much longer, and it does work. Let's move on to number 4 then. Position lights. This was sent over by a viewer of mine. I honestly cannot remember your name, so I do apologize, but it's something that I'd never really paid attention to. Let's say if you go over to one of the many Le Mans cars in game, so for example here we're going to use the Toyota GR010 Hybrid, of course the Toyota Hypercar, the real world Le Mans machine. Now this does actually have real world position lights on it. As you can see at the back here, if you're in third place you're going to have all 3 of the lights lit up. If it's in second, then it will have 2 of the 3 lights lit up. And of course, if you're in first, well, it's going to be a single light lit up to actually show off what position that car is in. Of course, as long as it's inside the top 3. And yes, it does change in real time. As you can see here, I'm going to go for an overtake, and instantly that's going to give me the position 2 light and the exact same for first. This is an awesome little detail. Number 5 then, this is going to be car indicators. Now something a lot of people might forget in GT7 is that cars do have hazard lights and indicators. So for example here, I'm just going to use the Alfa Romeo 8C because I think it's an absolutely beautiful machine. And of course it does have some very quirky headlights and of course indicators. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull over here and show you that yes, the indicators do actually work all around the car, including the little side indicators, as you can see flashing away there. And this isn't just for the outside of the car. As you can see in VR or something like that, you can actually see them working. A very obvious detail, but incredibly overlooked. Number 6 then is the FL5 Beep. Now with this one, of course, I'm referring to the Honda Civic Type R FL5, the latest generation of the car. And well, it's very much well known for being very annoying once you hit that red line. If you rev this car too much, yes, it will start beeping at you to tell you to shift, and this is very annoying. Now it will only actually show up in specific camera angles, mainly in car, hood cam and bumper cam. If you're in any of those and you hit the red line, well, you'll probably know that very annoying sound. Have a listen. However, when it came to the latest GT7 update, something did actually change with the FL5. It got an engine swap in the form of the Honda NSX GT500 engine, and I wanted to go ahead and test if the shift beep would be removed if we changed engine. Unfortunately not. It does remain there regardless, so unfortunately no matter which variation of the FL5 you've got in terms of its standard engine or swapped, it's always there. Number 7 then is going to be spray in the wind. Now honestly I just overlooked this one for part number 1 and 2, but it's absolutely awesome. The spray that comes off the back of the cars in the wet weather will actually move around with the direction of the wind. Once again, it just adds to the authenticity of the wet weather inside of GT7. This is incredibly impressive, and again, the stronger the wind is, the more you're probably going to notice this. And yes, it does do it with the AI or other drivers in the wet weather. Now number 8 is just a little one, is that crews will actually celebrate. Now unfortunately this is not present in every single event of GT7, so I went ahead and tested this in a bunch of events, and this one right here is one of the early game high speed ring races for front wheel drive cars. I absolutely smashed it, and unfortunately my team just wasn't bothered to actually come on the pit wall and celebrate this very hard-earned victory. Very unfortunate there with that one. However, in some events you may notice this. It typically happens in some of the bigger events in the game, but one of the best ones I've seen for it is the lightweight K Cup, which is of course at Lake Maggiore on the short course. As we can see, all of the teams up there on the wall. This is just an awesome little detail. So let's move on to number 9 then. Detail 9 is of course going to be exhaust change. Now I kind of spoke about this briefly in my previous episode, in which the sound actually changes of the exhaust, but it goes a lot deeper than that. The actual exhaust tip of your car will change depending on which exhaust you're running. So of course that's through sports, semi-racing and racing, as well as stock. So using this Mini Cooper S for example, we have the standard exhaust, then of course we have the sports exhaust, which has changed only just slightly. After that we do have the semi-racing, which you can see gets much more bigger and aggressive and more race-like, as well as of course changing the sound. And then we have the race exhaust, which is a single tip straight out of the back, very much what you see on a lot of the Mini Cooper S race cars that people typically build up for grassroots racing. This was an awesome feature. Number 10 then, to finish off this episode, is once again one that was pointed out to me by a viewer. This is 4-wheel steering inside of Gran Turismo 7. Now it's very specific to a few cars inside of GT7, but if it does have 4-wheel steering, you can actually see it happening and working if you go stationary in the car. So here we have our Porsche. As we can see, the 4-wheel steering does actually work when stationary. The AMG Black Series once again does have 4-wheel steering, and you can see it working. This is something that I'd never noticed before in GT7, and it was great that someone actually pointed this out to me. Again, it's a very specific range of cars, but it does actually seem to work, and you can see it working when stationary. And with that, our third episode of Hidden Details and Secrets inside of Gran Turismo 7 comes to an end. Thank you so much for joining me with this one. If you do have any more hidden details and secrets that I've not already covered, we are currently up to number 30, then feel free to leave them in the comment section down below for me to try out for the next episode. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.